I'm with Manish Tewari, the Congress MP from Chandigarh, a former Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting in the former Manmohan Singh government. Mr. Tewari is also well versed in international realpolitik. He meets a lot of people from across the world, and today we are fortunate here at the Tribune to have him. This is the Tribune interview. I'm Jyoti Malhotra. Do follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on our social media handles and tell us what you think of our offerings for you right here on the YouTube. Mr. Tewari, welcome to the Tribune.
Thank you very much, Jyoti ji.
Now, it's only been less than a couple of days, 48 hours since Donald Trump has come back or is coming back to the White House. He's won America. The votes are really quite significant. The Electoral College, as you know, it's a complicated system, as we all know, in America with the way the country votes. But 295 electoral votes versus 226 that Kamala Harris won, essentially a landslide for Donald Trump. Now, is this a lesson in how people in America and people in India, and I'll ask you the Modi question later, but is America tilting towards the right? Is that a good thing for India? Why do you think there has been this churn in American politics?
Well, the fact is that Mr. Trump has won, and he's won against considerable odds. Mm-hmm. I happened to be there in the US. I was a distinguished senior fellow with the Atlantic Council during his first term as president. Mm-hmm. And I watched that administration up very close between 2016 and 2019. And so therefore one can only hope that the second administration of Donald Trump would be different from the first one.
Why do you say
because, that? Because there was a revolving door in that administration. You know, it was a miracle if somebody would last a couple of months, if not a year. Mm-hmm. And there are very, very few people who actually lasted out the whole 4 years of the Trump presidency. And so one does hope that given the fact that you have a three-continent conflict going on,
yeah,
you know, it is the biggest churn after the Second World War and after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 90s. So the world is looking for stability, and since the US is the biggest outside balancer militarily and otherwise in the world, instability in the United States has a ripple effect all across the globe. So therefore one can just hope that it would be a more stable administration than what it was the last time. And I personally think that Kamala Harris possibly did not get enough time because she was not supposed to run. Okay. It was President Biden who was supposed to run. And then you had that unfortunate meltdown on television, which propelled the Democratic rank and file to ask for a change of candidate.
Right.
And so therefore, in the condensed time that she had, she's ended up doing fairly well.
So do you think, Mr. Tewari, that Donald Trump will be good for India?
If you look at the first term of the Trump presidency, the one ability that he has is to reach across and try and make deals.
Mm-hmm. A deal maker.
He was the only American president who actually had the temerity to take the political risk and reach out to Kim Jong-un. Mm-hmm. And
the North Korean dictator.
And not only once, but thrice over.
Okay.
The first time in Singapore, the next time in Hanoi when you had the Balakot crisis going on in India, yeah, and the third time in North Korea itself. I mean, he went into the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, and he stepped into North Korea, something which no American president has done. And even though his relationship with Putin was much criticized within the United States of America, there were lots of conspiracy theories, especially in the US deep state, but he persevered with that. And so therefore,
you're trying to tell me that he is not the kind of guy that you see, you don't see what you get?
He's not the establishment guy.
And is that good for India?
Well, it could be good or bad, because if you look at his campaign rhetoric, he's been beating down very hard on India, especially when it comes to tariff barriers
And immigrants.
and stuff like that. You know, his stand on immigrants is absolutely right to the right. You know, which he says that he'll pick up all of them and throw them out. Of course, I don't think the U.S. judicial system would allow it. But there will be a fair amount of inflection points in the relationship. And let's also not forget that Trump personally has gone through a lot in the past 4 years. You know, he's gone through excruciating judicial processes. He has been charged in various courts. And so therefore,
for the assault on the Congress.
Well, that because it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court and came down, that's been watered down quite a bit. But the New York indictment with regard to hush money, etc.,
Right.
and his personal accounts. So it would be interesting to watch, because you would have a president in the White House whose first act possibly would be to pardon his own self.
Pardon his own self, and we are not going to go into his private life, whether or not he paid money to a prostitute. But my question is, and I will come back to it, Prime Minister Modi has congratulated him, and very quickly, before even the result was fully announced. Was that a good thing?
You see, countries have interests, and those interests do not change just because individuals change. The United States has a certain interest in India, and that interest really comes from its view of the Indo-Pacific, where India is an important linchpin in its China strategy. India, on the other hand, since Prime Minister Modi's third term began, has actually tried to pivot away from the US. His first visit as Prime Minister to Russia, and then the modus vivendi which you have with China with regard to the line of actual control, and the fact that they met in Kazan.
Right.
There is speculation that the Russians had a role in the rapprochement
Between India and China, between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping.
Yeah, well, there is speculation to that effect. So under those circumstances, how would the US really be viewing all these developments? How committed would President Trump remain to the Ukraine war, given the fact that his NATO allies are very, very heavily invested? The one change that has taken place since he was last president is that two countries which had been neutral for 50 years, Sweden and Finland, because of the paranoia of Russia, have now become NATO members. The eastern flank of NATO is still very exposed. Poland is spending 4.2% of its GDP on defense. So therefore, there is a lot of churn in the world. And of course, you have the Israel-Hamas situation, whereby Prime Minister Netanyahu has really gone for the broke in the past 6 months,
Right.
fully exploited the vacuum in the US
But the
system.
India question, you're not saying to me, I'm just trying to understand, should Prime Minister Modi have held his hand by not tweeting, or was it a good thing that he went out and tweeted?
Well, I think it was fairly
His congratulations.
evident. I think it was fairly evident.
So it was a good thing.
Yeah, it was fairly evident that he is going to get past the 270 mark.
Right.
So therefore, I think a number of other world leaders would have preempted him. Anybody who was following the US elections had a sense that, you know, Trump had the edge. But ultimately, when you look at that block of red states, which goes just right across
America,
America, it brings me back to your fundamental question: has America moved right? And well, that seems to be the case, because the blues have really been confined to the fringes of the United States. So therefore, you have California, you have New York, you have little bits of blue.
So what is it that we are not understanding? In India, you have the BJP, which has now come back to power for the third time, albeit with reduced number of seats. In America, you have Donald Trump, which has come back with this huge landslide. What is it that we are not getting? Is it that people like us, who are center left, don't understand something that's happening?
The one thing that people are completely missing is that Americans are exhausted with their commitments abroad. And so therefore there has been questions now going back to 2007-8 as to why the United States of America needs to have those boots on the ground, be it Iraq, be it Afghanistan, because eventually the US spent 3.1 trillion in Afghanistan. And at the end of 21 years or 20 years, they handed the country back to the Taliban. They spent another $4.3 trillion in Iraq. So between the two wars, they've actually spent about 7.8 trillion.
Right.
And the US has not had an infrastructure renewal now going back to the Great Depression in 1930. So I think the reason why people voted for President Trump is primarily because he was not fixated on America abroad. He was actually concentrating his energies and his message on what he would do for the United States.
Just creating new jobs, reducing unemployment.
Absolutely, and saying that, we'll spend American money in America itself. And how much that would be possible given that your global engagements cannot get entangled or untangled in a very short span of time. And of course, there is still the China to watch, right, despite its economic recession. But under those circumstances, I think that is the message which resonated with the voters. And that there you will have an inflection point with India, especially when it comes to tariffs and stuff like that.
So that's my next question. Now, you're the MP for Chandigarh, which is the capital of both Punjab and Haryana. My question to you is, as people here in the region and outside are going to watch you say these things, how does it make me a difference whether Donald Trump is President of America or not?
Well, it makes a difference primarily because President Trump's policies on immigration, his policies with regard to the H-1B visa process, his policies with regard to the fact that he is going to be less committed to things which are going to be happening in the world, obviously as an Indian is going to impact me. For example,
we have a large, Punjab for example has a lot of people going to Canada in the US.
Well, Canada is a different story altogether. We have, I think, close to 1.5 million people or 1.6 million people.
Punjabis?
From across the country. A substantive bulk of that diaspora is from Punjab. The relationship goes back to all the way back to the 19th century, the last decade of the 19th century. And what's been happening with Canada is extremely unfortunate because that relationship has got completely gutted because of the stand that President Trudeau has taken. But coming back to Prime Minister Trudeau has taken, but coming back to the United States of America, your question is very relevant. How does it really impact India? It impacts India because if, let us suppose, the barriers to entry in terms of immigration of skilled and unskilled people are going to grow higher, if America is going to become far, far more insular in its approach, this means that there would be a vacuum in international affairs, giving more space to China to possibly spread its wings. That has direct national security implications for India. So therefore, America's role, either in an aggressive posture or in a benign posture, does really impact the world because eventually America spends 8 times of China on national defense at about $2.1 trillion.
Okay.
And China spends more than 17 of the militaries in the Indo-Pacific combined. So under those circumstances, with Trump as a deal maker and the United States having all these internal contradictions, you may have a situation whereby, which manifested itself after the economic meltdown in 2008, that you could be looking at a G2 situation.
A G2, a US-China situation?
Yeah, well, Barack Obama articulated it in those words in 2009 in Beijing itself. And with Russia embroiled in Ukraine and Russia, almost a junior partner to China at the moment, and the US with all its contradictions and the fact that it has a huge spiraling national debt, which it services just because it prints the dollars,
Yeah.
right? And the world trying to hedge its bets, because for the first time after 1990, the gold reserves, which are held by sovereign central banks around the world, has been at its highest.
So let me ask you the immigration question, or the H-1B visa, which is a temporary employment question. If Donald Trump is going to be more, I don't want to use the word isolationist, but if you're going to give Americans more of the jobs, then what happens? Then Indians get impacted, and other people. But let's talk about Indians.
Well,
so if Indians get impacted, what happens?
Well, we are already at the very high end of the H-1B process, right? So under those circumstances, if Mr. Trump decides to walk the talk on immigration, this means opportunities get squeezed. And since we used to get a disproportionate amount of those visas, obviously it impacts the possibility of our young people moving. And it's not as if the movement is a brain drain, because a lot of people have actually got the opportunity to be at the cutting edge of science and technology. And when you are in the fourth industrial revolution, the kind of opportunities which, let's say, a Silicon Valley offers or other cutting edge institutions offer, if you study there, you get trained there, you work there, you obviously have the ability to be able to wealth create coming back to India.
But Mr. Tewari, your Punjabis are not coming back to India. They're all going to Canada and America and not coming back. And
well,
that Mr. Trump doesn't like. And Mr. Trudeau, for example, right now, but that's another question.
Well, a lot of students from Canada are coming back because the Canadian economy is up a creek without a paddle. So
but
therefore,
that's temporary, isn't it?
So, well, you see, eventually, if you look at it from India's point of view, and I have been arguing this for a very, very long time, India in the World Trade Organization, a process which again unfortunately has been shortchanged by the United States of America, actually needs to argue for a global work visa. A global work visa for young people who have a certain amount of skills and knowledge.
But that's exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump stands for.
So that is exactly where the inflection point is going to come. Because at a national median age of 28.1, your demographic dividend is not going to flip till 2047. You have this huge young population. The job opportunities that you've been able to create, especially in the past 10 years, have been very, very limited. So therefore, under those circumstances, if you have to accommodate these people, since you are putting them through the education process, obviously you need a more permissive visa regime, whether in the US or Australia or Canada or Europe. And that is not happening because barriers to entry have been going up since 9/11.
So let me now ask you the Guru Patwant Singh Pannu question, or the Hardeep Singh Nijjar question in Canada. As the Chandigarh MP, and you've prior to this been MP for Ludhiana and for Anandpur Sahib, why is Canada or why is the US focusing so much on the Guru Patwant Singh Pannu, who is a self-avowed Khalistani activist? What's going on? Why is Prime Minister Trudeau coming out, standing up in Parliament and accusing India of instigating and provoking the attacks on Canadian citizens?
Jyoti, both those situations are extremely unfortunate, but they are apples and pears. You cannot compare the Canada situation to the US situation.
Why not?
And let me explain. You see, in the case of the United States of America, unfortunately, there are 2 indictments which have been filed in a court of law. I am given to understand that there are 2 other indictments in sealed cover.
What does that mean?
Well, indictments which would be opened when they will get filed. So nobody really knows as to who have been named in those indictments.
So 2 other American citizens?
No. So therefore, there are 2 indictments, what we call, well, a charge sheet, which has been unsealed and filed. and there are 2 sealed indictments which have not been opened in court as yet. So nobody actually knows what is there in those 2 sealed indictments, who else has been named, who else has not been named. But the fact is that the Americans obviously have a certain amount of evidence. Now, whether that evidence stands in a court of law or not is a different matter, but evidence enough to prosecute certain people for what they believe are alleged crimes which have been committed against their citizens, irrespective of what our view about them is. And our view obviously is that they directly interfere and try and subvert the unity and integrity and sovereignty of India. But in the case of Canada, there is no evidence which has been presented so far. There are leaks, peeps and squeaks. And so therefore, the behavior of Prime Minister Trudeau and his government therefore is completely inexplicable. And with Canada, we've had this long-standing problem. This is not the first time that you had an expulsion of diplomats. It happened in 1989, but you never had a Prime Minister make such a song and dance about it. Coupled with that, Canada has not been really sensitive to India's security concerns.
Why?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. Why? Because if you go all the way back to the bombing of Kanishka in 1985, in the May of 1985, the fact is that out of the 324 people who were killed, 269 were Canadian citizens.
Of Indian origin, but they were Canadian.
They were Canadian. So therefore, Canada being a multicultural society, it was incumbent upon them to take that investigation seriously. Ultimately, at the end of it, and there was not only one bomb blast, there was a bomb blast at Narita airport also, in which some airport handlers died. And at the end of it, if you have one person convicted, and that too for perjury, right, it obviously goes to show that the prosecution was not that robust. Coupled with that, over all these years and over many administrations, we have been trying to sensitize Canada that, look, would you like it that when you had a referendum in Quebec, if India would have interfered, that Quebec wanted to split at one point in time. So therefore, if India would have interfered in that process, would you have liked it? So obviously, India does not like interference into its internal affairs. But unfortunately for India, you will have 2 trials which will play themselves out. And obviously, as they are going to be held in open court, there would be things which would be presented. And so therefore, the real challenge lies for India, and both for Canada and US. How do you insulate the larger relationship from the fallout of what is going to happen? Because let's not forget, 1.6 million people in Canada, 99.9% of them peace-loving. Immigrants who went there for a better life, who have been absorbed.
But you saw pictures, you saw videos of Hindu Canadians and Sikh Canadians. I hate to put it like that, but that's how they are now describing themselves. Fighting with each other in 2 ends of the country, in Surrey in the west and in Brampton in the east.
So it is extremely unfortunate, and Prime Minister Trudeau should realize that what you sow, you reap. And so therefore, if you try and create these divisions, obviously they are going to have repercussions and implications, and the repercussions and implications are not going to be on India. They are going to be much more substantially on Canada. So there is always a danger when you run this gauntlet, and I think Prime Minister Trudeau and his government should wake up and smell the coffee and realize that this is a very dangerous street that they have gone down. But
Which is what? That they're instigating or allowing Khalistani activists to preach separatism or, violence against India?
Well, the bottom line is, as I earlier said, that nations have permanent interests. People come and go. The interest between India and Canada is that both countries should inter se have a stable relationship. And Prime Minister Trudeau's approach unfortunately is not really helping
Okay.
the cause of that stable relationship. And so therefore, when an election is held in Canada and you have a new dispensation, and by all accounts people say that there would be a change of government in Canada, I do hope there is more sanity which comes into the relationship. And unfortunately, in this case, the relationship has not been spoilt by India. The shoe's actually been on the other foot for a very long time now.
Okay, now there is a new president in America. Now, these indictments that you talked about in the Gurpatwant Singh Pannu issue, when those are open, whenever they're open, and we don't know what's going to come of them, but the new government in the US, or the new administration in the US, is obviously going to not drop that case. Now, my question to you is, however good the relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, and the whole howdy Modi and up ki baar Trump sarkar, and we heard all this rhetoric the last time around, what happens, and I am asking you to look into a crystal ball, what happens when Indians are being named as instigating or provoking attacks on American citizens?
Well, first of all, the US administration would be able to do jack, for the lack of a better word, because the judicial system in the US safeguards its independence very zealously. Even someone like former President Trump ended up getting convicted.
Right.
It's another matter that he can pardon himself now. But that also testifies to the robustness of that system. So if the expectation is
here in Delhi,
if the expectation is here in Delhi that with a change of administration in the United States of America, the judicial processes may take another trajectory, I am afraid I do not see that happening. And so therefore, the effort will have to remain, which it has been for the last year or so, that how do you insulate the larger Indo-US relationship from the fallout of whatever is going to happen or not happen in a New York court.
So you mean to say that National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, India's National Security Advisor, who could not accompany Prime Minister Modi when he went to the US a couple of months ago to the UNGA, that situation could continue because there is a civil suit which names him in the US?
Well, unfortunately, that is the way the US judicial system functions. And once you get served in a civil suit, then obviously you are arraigned in a judicial proceeding.
So it doesn't matter if there is a new president called Donald Trump, and even if he's soft on India, you don't think things will change?
Well, given that there is already a matter before a court of law there, I do not think that there would be a substantive change in the status quo. I feel that that judicial process, which has acquired a life of its own, will go forward. How much are we able to firewall that, as I earlier said, from the larger relationship, given that both India and the US have a convergence on many, many issues, not
like on
only
China.
Like on China, like the situation in the Middle East, which if it goes further south will have implications on a large Indian diaspora which lives and works there. In addition to that, we have a stake in the global security architecture. So therefore, there is.
So what you're saying to me, Mr. Tewari, is that on the immigration front, President Trump will be tough. On the indictment, of the potential indictment against Indian citizens on the Gurpatwant Singh Pannu issue or other Khalistani activists, President Trump has no option but to be tough. And
it's not a question of his being tough. The thing
but the system is like that. The judicial system is like that.
The thing is that judicial system, has a life of its own. And in fact, there is a very strong firewall between the executive and even the federal prosecution in the US, whereby a large number of federal cabinet members are not even able to talk to the director of the FBI. They maintain that Chinese wall in a very rigorous and robust manner.
So Prime Minister Modi and the government of India have to phook ke kadam rakho, if you like.
Well, in the sense, we need to find the convergences, and if those convergences actually have a larger strategic play, then obviously there may be a certain play within the joints,
right,
which may actually make these things go away. I mean, that is wishful thinking at this point in time, but as someone who's been covering international politics for a very long time, you know, stuff happens, things happen.
Stuff happens, and actually I'm sure that a lot of my viewers are wondering, you're the MP from Chandigarh, and why I'm asking you about all these world and international issues, and why I'm not asking you about the by-polls in Punjab.
Well, the by-elections in Punjab have been postponed, and so therefore now they've been rescheduled by the election commission.
Why do you think?
Well, I think there's just too many marriages happening. So therefore,
too many marriages happening. I see.
So
too many happy people in Punjab, is it?
No. Well, I guess it was a request from maybe all political parties that if you could extend it by a few days. But what these by-elections will eventually do is that they will not impact the stability of the government.
Having said that, the Congress party, which is, you know, really coming out and pushing its candidates, and you did quite well in the Lok Sabha elections as well. Now, Gidar Baha, which everybody is watching, Manpreet Badal, Amrita Waring, the wife of Raja Waring, what's going on in Gidar Baha?
So therefore, you know, allow me to just complete. So while it will not impact the stability of the government, but it will give you a temperature check. So this by-election
of politics in the state.
Of politics in the state, because this election or this by-election, unlike previous by-elections in Punjab, and I've seen a lot of them, where invariably it would go with the incumbent and would not give you a reality check of the political mood. Because if you recall, the Congress also refused to participate in 2016 in a by-election,
right,
which the Akalis won, and then went on to form the government in 2017 by a huge majority. But this situation is different. This situation or these by-elections will actually give you a sense of the temperature of the state.
And the Akali Dal is not even fighting, so what is this temperature all about? The Akali Dal is irrelevant, do you think?
Well, nobody really becomes irrelevant in politics, but the Akali Dal is facing numerous internal challenges, and I think in their wisdom they decided to put their own house in order rather than go and run in the elections, where obviously they would have concluded that they are not going to be doing too well. But it would be interesting to watch as to how this would pan out. By all accounts, it seems that the Congress is doing fairly well on all the four seats.
Aam Aadmi Party is not letting go, Mr. Tewari.
Well, obviously as the incumbents you will try and put your best foot forward, because it has implications for your government. But as I said, the Lok Sabha result in Punjab, you know, had panned out very differently from what maybe the government had anticipated. And so it will be interesting to watch the outcome of these elections.
The BJP and the Akali Dal, of course, there's no relation, at least no formal relationship between the two. Do you think that the weaknesses of the Akali Dal will help the BJP improve its position or its influence in Punjab?
Well, there is a fundamental disconnect between the, if I can say it in those words, between the Taseer of Punjab. Punjab the Taseer or BJP ek dooje naal milde nahi hai.
18% of the vote they got last time around.
There could be a bump. You know, Punjab at times votes, if I can say, in an erratic manner. You know, we had a situation in 1989 also. So these situations do keep manifesting themselves from time to time. But fundamentally, the BJP and the ethos of Punjab do not gel. So under those circumstances, I really don't think, irrespective of whatever votes they may have got in Parliament, 18% or, you know, 18.3%, I really don't see a pathway for the BJP, because fundamentally, and that is really a problem with Delhi. Delhi now, going back to the times of the Mughals, has never understood Punjab. and still continues not to have a fair understanding of what Punjab is.
So since I've been asking you to put on your, analyst's hat, including that, and besides that one of a politician, what's happening with the Aam Aadmi Party? It seems as if the elections in Delhi in February is directly related to what's happening in politics in Punjab.
No, I think Punjab and Delhi are completely different. And the reason why
the Aam Aadmi Party is in power in both states.
That may be, but you see, Delhi has a large floating immigrant population. You've also lived in Delhi, for a substantive part of your life. I've also lived in Delhi. I partly continue to live there. And so therefore, under those circumstances, the kind of investment that people have in politics in Punjab, going down to the smallest village, that is not there in Delhi. Delhi, that way, is a fairly apolitical space, if I can put it in those words. Punjab, every little village and every last person is invested in the political processes, because the political processes are directly germane to his life. So therefore, a panch or a sarpanch or a block samiti member or
so why is Arvind Kejriwal so now, he's putting a lot of interest into Punjab? Why is that?
Well, obviously, given the fact that Punjab is the second state which they won after Delhi, they obviously would have a stake in perpetuating themselves. But as I said, that Punjab is a very, very adventurous place and people are extremely experimental, and so therefore...
so you don't think the politics in Punjab will have an impact on the politics of Delhi?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely
so the
not.
elections in Delhi in February, scheduled to be in February, you don't think will be impacted by what happens by the governance, by the Aam Aadmi Party's governance in Punjab?
For example, you had an election in Haryana. Even that election in Haryana, which surrounds Delhi from three sides, is not going to have an impact on what happens in Delhi. Fortunately or unfortunately, every state has started ticking to its own rhythm. Okay. And under those circumstances...
So India is becoming a federal state, truly.
Well, India, if you ask me, is best governed by a coalition, because of the simple reason that the diversity of India has now become extremely difficult to manage with the kind of centralism which some political parties want to bring to the table.
Now, this has been really an armchair, free-flowing kind of conversation, Mr. Tewari, but I cannot let you go without asking you about the problems of paddy procurement in Punjab. Do you think the BJP government in Delhi is doing this deliberately to the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab?
Well, paddy procurement is always a challenge, and Delhi, unfortunately, now going back to the farmers' agitation, whereby they had to withdraw the farm laws, has been behaving with Punjab in a stepmotherly manner.
Deliberately, you think?
Well, in the sense, obviously, if it is stepmotherly, it is deliberate. But then, as a state government, you have to be prepared, because the two big things in Punjab for any government are that paddy procurement should go smoothly, and the procurement of wheat needs to go smoothly. And as state governments, people are not, or the people of Punjab are not going to accept that by passing on the buck to Delhi and the procurement not going smoothly, things can just be kind of finished. There is the agrarian economy of Punjab is just so invested and connected to the politics of Punjab that the kind of problems that you are having in procurement now will have a direct political impact.
Manish Tewari, thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful to you for spending so much time here with us at the Tribune. Do follow us on all our social media handles. Of course, you've been reading the paper for several years, but do also now subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you.